This is The Change Physician, episode 102.
All right. Well, hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of The Change Physician. This is the podcast for helping you to develop the skills and mindsets around health, wealth, relationships, as well as your own personal self here. And I'm joined, as always, with my fantastic, fabulous co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady, who is just, look at her. She's ecstatic and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like always. So
Not
how are
like
you doing
yesterday.
today? Not like yesterday. What happened yesterday?
Pretty sleepy.
Oh, yesterday was sleepy. So you've had some good sleep, which is that restorative
better.
part, and now you're back.
Yeah.
All right.
It's better today. I don't feel like I'm in a funk because I'm lacking sleep.
There should be a word for that, like where they do emotional kind of emotional granularity, where you start taking the concept and expanding it by making it very specific. Like hungry plus angry, right? Whereas it's the annoyance and anger that's associated with that. There should be one around sleep. I'm trying to think of what sloop. Yeah. Sloopy. I'm sloopy today.
You're in a sloop, like a slump, but not enough sleep. I don't know. That one doesn't work too well.
Well, it kind of does. A sloop, where if you're a slump because of lack of sleep.
Yeah. Well, we just made one up.
Made one up. There we go.
You've heard it here at the Change Physician.
Where it starts. Sloop is starting.
We're in a sloop.
We're in a sloop. And you don't want to be in a sloop. You want to make sure you get that good, delicious sleep.
Yes. It definitely is needed.
Well, I have something I wanted to talk to you about today. And if you were up for it, I thought maybe our listeners might be interested in this as well. And this is another particular quote. We've been doing a lot of quotes. But this one has a lot of meaning to me. And I'll have some context in a second. But this comes from that age-old source of wisdom that has been with us for at least 30 years now, or close to 30 years, which is called J.K. Rowling and the world known as or the character known as Harry Potter, and all in that particular series. And there was a quote that is originally written in the books, but they altered it for the movies, and I like the movie version a little bit better. But it is said by Dumbledore, who is the Grand Wizard, sort of the mentor figure for this, to young Harry. I don't remember what movie exactly, but it was, "Dark and difficult times lie ahead, Harry. Soon we must all make the choice between what is right and what is easy." And I wanted to bring that up for a number of different reasons. I remember the first time I read that, it really struck a nerve. And then as I was going through my changed physician sort of transition period, which had to do about pain and this dissonance between what the data said and what I was doing, and learning more and understanding what was really complex, and making it, just seeing that dissonance between how we treat it and what the data says. I did a ground rounds presentation for the hospital. And when I was doing this ground rounds and I was building it, I was trying to pull in all this information that I was learning, again, very much in the infancy at the time, but it was expanding beyond this idea of the simple kind of stimulus response idea that most people have around pain, that we poke something and then a pain receptor gets stimulated, and little pain pus particles channel a pain pathway into a pain center, and all of a sudden, boom, the pain comes out of your brain, which is completely ridiculous. It's not how it works. But that's how most of us were taught. And so I was pulling in the emotional element, which at the time I was still thinking in a very sequential fashion. Now we understand it more as an emergent process, but back then I was still trying to pull this in. And so I was talking about this emotional element and how it contributed and was involved in how pain's constructed. And what I realized when I was building that particular talk, and I realized as I was looking out on the audience, is this fundamentally changes how we practice. Because how we do things is set up in such a way that's really about billing. And oftentimes what we're trying to do is set up a practice model and a patient care flow, I should say that, a profit care flow that optimizes the outcomes that are easy for us. So if I'm a surgeon, obviously I'm going to want to operate. So I'm going to be, the default is to do operations. That's the easy path. Right. If I'm a pain physician, quote unquote, injectionist, the easy thing for me to do is injections. It's not for me to actually learn the science of pain and figure out how I actually integrate into and sort of help somebody manage and master that experience. It's for me to set up an injection train. And you can take it even outside the realm of medicine to all this stuff, particularly large kind of businesses, these monoliths healthcare systems, where what they have done is they've set up the entire kind of organization in such a way that is easy for the person who benefits from it. Not benefits in the way it's meant to, not their end user, but the person who's the profit share. So a healthcare system makes you fill out 55 different forms, not because it's easy for you or appropriate for you, but it's because they don't want to look up anything ahead of the time. Having three different things when you fill in the lines, they can have the MA do it. They can have someone else do it. They know they're not missing any important data that may be from billing, but it's not, or preventing your insurance card 65 different times in the course of an interaction there. That really isn't around how do you optimize the patient experience? How do you do what's best for your end user? Instead, it's all about what makes it easy for us. Anyway, so what I would love to hear your kind of thoughts on that, or your experiences when it comes to making that choice between what is right and what is easy.
Yeah, I just had a conversation today in the operating room discussing how frustrating it can be for the end user, aka patient, who is trying to navigate not only the system, but many times when patients are discharged from a hospital and they have this new chronic ailment that needs some tweaking as far as medications, side effects, any concerns that they have. There's this limitation in structure of coverage that is like, you can see them every 3 months, and or the way that the availability of a cardiologist, it doesn't benefit the patient to have frequent modifications of something that's creating some significant side effects, aside from the fact that, oh, you're going to go back to the emergency room because nobody else can like see you fast enough or talk to you or call you, or you're having trouble getting through in the office. And so, being that I'm a friend of this person, I'm like encouraging them to be an advocate for themselves. Then they asked me to come to the appointment, and I'm like, unless it's really an emergency, I've already committed to a case that I need to cover. And so it's quite a struggle, which then makes you think, the direct primary care would be the perfect model for this person. And so, but then you got to convince them to pay that a little extra, so when I think of it not being what's really right for patients, we need to start with them and then build the system around it. And what we've done is we created a system that ends up not really addressing the end user in the way that it really needs to be addressing things. So it was a perfect example of, what the system is doing doesn't make sense, and it doesn't seem right. And is it going to be easy? Probably not to fix or to address this. And that kind of ties in even to creating the system you want so you feel like the patients are being addressed appropriately. Like when I do anesthesia and I do the pre-op ahead of time, they have contact info so they can reach out to me. So if there's any concerns, and most people don't take it, advantage of that in a bad way. There's occasionally people that are overly stressed and anxious, and they're going to reach out to you more than the average person. But most people don't, they don't abuse that. And so if you just create avenues where you can create communication with them versus them having to jump through all these hoops, I think they get patients become in a helpless, hopeless situation. And you can see why people get irate and angry when they're trying to get into the system. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people, there's very little time spent with the physician. Most of the time spent on their own and trying to figure it out. And it's not going to necessarily be the appropriate approach. So I think that's just one thing that I thought of when you brought up that quote. And I also think of just, even whether it's the operating room or a regular clinic, like you said, people that are surgeons tend to do surgery. That's the easy thing. I think I have the most respect for physicians that, despite the system not working for the patient, that they try to fill that role as best they can, or find ways to amend their own practice to help fill those gaps and treat that person like they'd want to be treated, and as a whole person, not this diagnosis that you treat with this thing, but actually maybe spending time with them. I mean, such as your primary care friends that we've talked to and interviewed in the past that decided this is for the birds. They decided to change a practice or create a hybrid model or something that allows you to do what's best for patients, even though it took a lot of courage and learning for them to really address things appropriately for patients. So, but even even people, I have to kind of add on, in the world of medicine, people get desensitized when they've been working in this field a while, and you can, and it's not that it's overtly said, but many times, like even in the operating room, people are asleep, typically under general anesthesia. you know um it's, I don't want to say there's cutting corners, but sometimes I feel like I have to be a protector of the patient because, whether it's like moving patients or, positioning, like you have to kind of remind people like, this is not just like a pancake you're turning, or like, it's, you have to always kind of be consciously aware that you are the advocate for that patient when they are not aware. And so I think we always have to kind of check each other and make sure that we're, you know, communicating for the benefit of the patient and doing the right things for the patient. And it's easier to cut corners. It's kind of, you can take the easy road where it's like kind of slack off a little bit, but you got to do right by the patient and make sure that you're doing all the little things that they don't see that you do because that's the right thing to do. So,
well, but that just kind of again feeds into that, is there's the right action and then there's the easy action. And as physicians, I think it becomes, because with, you have this monolith thing. I mean, if you're listening to us and you're a physician, this is relatively important, is the monolith is going to do what's easy for the monolith. It's not going to look out for you. That's going to include your patients. And then there's that dissonance that we're going to have between trying to do what's right for our patients and then what is actually easy to do. And if you fall into that trap of doing the easy thing all the time, I'm not going to say it never happens, because anytime we're fatigued or maybe we're stressed, there are minutes where you're not the perfect individual, and we have to have some element of compassion and empathy for ourselves and our colleagues as well. But I don't have a whole lot of compassion and empathy for people who have completely defaulted to the easy decision, where it no longer is. And this could move into sort of a burnout discussion. I don't want to go into a burnout discussion for this particular episode here, because that should be its own topic. But there are so many points of interaction where each of us there's an advocate against the system if the system seems to be doing harm. So being willing to be that advocate can be a very dark and difficult choice to do. I have experienced, I've experienced that in multiple different ways. I've experienced being the advocate and being in a very dark and difficult and very lonely space. And and then people tell you afterward, oh, it was great. I'm like, well, why weren't you standing up there? That's when I needed you. I've also had on the flip side observed people who have said that they're advocates, but yet when they get into the dark and difficult space, they don't, because in that moment, it is a dark and difficult decision to do. And so rather than confront or stand up in the world, maybe you're the only physician who's in a boardroom full of executives who have no idea, who are making policies that are going to affect your colleagues. And you know that is not going to be the right thing for them. Do you sit there and go, well, you know what, I'm going to work behind the scenes and try to improve this? Or do you actually advocate in that setting, knowing that there may be some blowback on you? And that's where that whole idea of being differentiating is easy. Are you doing it? Are you making the easy decision because it's the easiest one for you? Or are you going to choose to actually make the more difficult one, particularly in those kind of periods when it really is going to make a tremendous difference, rather than doing the default? And anyway, I just think from a universal standpoint, for anyone, whether you're a physician versus you're a patient versus administrator versus whatever your job, you could be a frontline staff working in a restaurant, like you could be a high school kid. And it's like, are you going to actually do what's right for this person in front of you? Or are you going to do whatever is quick and easy and tell them that, no, we can't make that, or, oh, we don't actually, I don't know, I can't, it's been so long since I worked fast food. I can't remember all those decisions. And I'm not saying roll over. If someone's abusive to you, don't, that obviously is not something that we're advocating.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there's a lot of opportunities that people have where maybe it's going to take an extra 2 steps. And I think the more you take those 2 steps, that easy path becomes easier and easier to follow. And ultimately you may end up in a place that you don't want to be, or certainly the people around you don't want to be, rather than, really focusing on what is right in those moments, then we have the energy and power to do something about it.
Yeah. And we had a conversation again today, and just how humans in general could be kind of, we're self-serving many times. And so, or you're in a place of just wanting to, it's kind of like survival, or you don't want to lose your job, or you're, the political side of things. And there's definitely politics related to a lot of medical, environments as well. Especially if like you have a surgery center that's owned by the surgeons who bring the cases, and your your anesthesia people are different. And so there's a lot of powers at play there. And, this whole contention on doing what's right and speaking up, or calling the medical board. There's, and it's tough because many times what you witness, like maybe a surgeon that shouldn't be, they shouldn't be doing certain things, or they're misbehaving, or they're maybe not treating the patient in as respectful way as you can. How do you prove that? And you just, when you work in the field and you see certain things, there's, there could be high volume, surgeons out there that they put on a good show. They're good at selling the surgery, and the patients, think that this is the guy. But, when you see them on the flip side in the operating room and how they treat staff, or how they treat the human body, it's not respectable, and at times concerning for safety. But it gets flipped. It can be flipped on you, and you get is it blackballed? Is that the right word?
Blackballed, blacklisted, blackballed when they get rid of you, blacklisted, they won't hire you.
Well, yeah, like you're kind of the bad guy, because if that person gets taken away, then all that income to that facility goes away. So and it's not like an overt thing. It's like these subtleties that are just, it's just hard to prove unless you take people that have the power to demand that this person be removed from practice. Because you can just say there was a complication, and complications happen. And, so people can swing it in ways. And then, it's not as easy. But at the same time, if you're concerned and you're experienced enough to know that this is something does not seem right, you should at least flag it. But there is risk, and that's why sometimes anonymous, input to the medical boards and stuff is there, so you can at least maybe not lose your livelihood. But the problem is you worry about other people trying to speak badly about you, even though you're doing the right thing. And that's the, what you're talking about. There could be definitely some, I can't even think of the word you just said, not recoil.
Repercussions.
No, just like it hits you in the face after you try to do the right thing. Sometimes, it's like the politician in Australia that, even though his party was like against getting rid of guns, he felt like after the big, the first like big, huge mass murder that there's no reason we should have all these guns, and had a kind of like a buyback program. He's like, the guy was interviewing him. It's like, why, you knew that you're going to lose you wouldn't get reelected next time when you made this decision. He's like, yeah, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, we don't have that.
I'm like, he's like, well, in America, like all they care about is getting reelected.
Yeah, talk about the difference between what is right and what is easy. We got a whole,
yeah.
That's a whole nother topic.
I had to tie it into something non-medical just for the sake of having a little bit more outside of just medicine.
Oh, but well, it is. It's like, and this is like the universal themes, like what we're talking about in the change position. We're talking about things that we kind of use a lot of medical examples because that's our background.
Right.
And that's probably what a lot of listeners are, but it's not like it's only confined to this. Think about finances in the whole financial world, where you got Goldman Sachs and these people who are doing high volume trading, who have developed algorithms where they can slip in orders when they see a large orders coming in. It's microseconds, and it might be cents on the dollar, but when you're doing vast volume, they're making money. That money is not they're doing it because they've manipulated the system.
Yeah.
And then we look at politics. How many people, I mean, if anybody listen to this, I don't care where you are in this whole spectrum thing, that can't point to an example of a politician that has blatantly, the blatant hypocrisy that comes out of their mouth, and that somehow they still get reelected again,
regardless of party.
Although I'm not going to do the both sides thing here, because there's some heavy duty hypocrisy going on.
Oh yeah.
But
any politician is vulnerable to this.
They are, and you got the politicians that are not doing what's right for their constituents, and then on the other side, we also got constituents that are just like not doing what's right for even their values or their community. I don't even know why people do some of the things they do, but
or a previous president that was a Democrat who said he would only run if he was a Republican.
Yeah.
We won't say names, but
that's not even hard to look up on that one. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So anyway, but so to wrap this up, I think one of the things that anyone can do, and one in your position is going to be, because every single human being, no matter what your role, what your job, who you're dealing with, these situations are going to come up over and over again. And you'll know it. The little voice, the little Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder is going to say, oh, well, I should do this, and you can either in that moment in time choose to listen to that and do what the right thing is, or you can do the easy thing. And granted, we will all at times make those easy decisions, but if you're doing it over and over and over again, that's a point where you really start needing taking track of what your actions are, what the repercussions of those actions are, and maybe start working on a little bit of changing yourself so that you can sort of ultimately make a little bit more difficult choices rather than the easy one.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it all just leads to, unfortunately, it's probably the path less traveled when it comes to making those choices. You'd hope it was the path more traveled, but
but it's not going to be a path travel at all if we don't have people starting, right? Because that's the other thing is once you start and you start stamping down that path, it makes it a little bit easier for somebody else to come after you. So if no one's doing it, it may be you that has to. But it's definitely thinking more terms of what's right versus what's easy.
Yeah. Be an example for others to follow. So definitely, I think you kind of summarized it there at the end. So I'll go ahead and take us out. And for those of you listening, we love to hear from you. You can always join the community at thechangedphysician.com, whether you're a physician or a physician ally. And you can also leave any ratings or reviews on any of our podcast venues. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And again, I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my awesome co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and we'll see you next time.
Stay well, folks.